good evening and welcome to the Royal Opera House, both to our audience here in the beautiful crush room just meters away from where our auditorium is, and to everybody watching worldwide online via YouTube. My name is Amy Lane and I am the Head Staff Director here at the Royal Opera, and tonight we are going behind the scenes of a true classic, Tosca. It's a tale of love, lust, corruption, deception, and political instability, an absolute thriller, and of course, all told through Puccini's spellbinding music. David Yun-Hung Kim and Paul Wynne-Griffiths have just given us a glimpse into that astounding score with the soaring Act 1 aria, Recondita Armonia, and we have much more to come tonight. Now, Jonathan Kent's production of Tosca is currently on stage here at the Royal Opera House, and on Wednesday, the 7th of February, it will be live in cinemas worldwide. Now tonight, I'll be talking to cast members and operatic superstars, Joseph Calleja and Gerald Finley, and also to Paul Wynne-Griffiths from the Royal Opera House music staff, who will take us on a journey through Puccini's beautiful score. Our collections team will also tell us about Tosca's history here at Covent Garden, and they will show us some beautiful costumes from our 3 landmark productions. I'll also be speaking to revival director Andrew Sinclair, who will tell us why Jonathan Kent's production is so well loved, and there will be more live performances to come. We'd also really like to hear from you tonight, so do please leave any thoughts, any questions in the comments section on YouTube, and hopefully I will get to read those out later on this evening. But now, ladies and gentlemen, do please welcome Joseph Calleja and Gerald Finley. Thank you for joining us.
Great.
Now, last night, performance 4, a little secret, I watched from the wings, and it was a corker. It was absolutely fantastic. But for anybody watching tonight who may not have heard or watched or seen Tosca, Joseph, would you tell us a little summary about the story?
Well, basically, the tenor wants to make love to the soprano, but the baritone gets in the way.
We need say nothing else.
That's the abridged version. No, I mean, it's the most cinematic of operas, or one of the most cinematic. Puccini had a way to grab you from the first chord. You know, when the opera opens, goes bam, 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 bam. You go like, okay, this is going to be very interesting. And then the action, the movement, the line of the orchestra, the line of the singers, everything goes from one scene to another like a movie that has been edited perfectly. It's an incredible work of art, this opera. And the story basically is 2 artists. I'm a painter, and Tosca is, of course, the singer, a great singer. And we have a love affair that has been going on for several years. Meanwhile, I have, which is not in the libretto, meanwhile I have lived in France before. By me, I mean Cavaradossi, and so he's a French sympathizer. And this puts me in the eyesight of Scarpia. And of course, Scarpia also wants Tosca for himself, if only to conquer her, if only to have her. And then once he's had her, that's fine. And of course, I'm in the way. So he's always trying to find something. He's always trying to wait for the right moment in time to do that. And Angelotti gives him that chance. And long story short, that was a Freudian slip. Long story short, I do get shot in the end, in the most horrible of manners, because Tosca, a really evil man, I'm not pointing fingers, an evil man promises her that I'm going to be shot, shot in a fake manner. Of course, he didn't mean that. And Cavaradossi dies and Tosca kills herself to the cry, God will judge me, Scarpia, davanti a Dio.
Would you agree with that? Playing Baron Scarpia, would you say that is the story? That's a Cavaradossi version, and one I absolutely agree with. So what would Scarpia say is the story?
Yeah, Scarpia's, first of all, perhaps the villain of all operatic villains. He's definitely a psychopath. I would say he's got designs on, self-aggrandizement, whether it's political position or within the church. He wants to be seen as someone who's, getting the very best out of his life and opportunities. He has, in the second act, he has a little bit of an aria, which is described as a credo. And basically, he tries to get every pleasure that he can, or every experience, visceral pleasure, out of any opportunity. The political situation is very in great turmoil in Rome at this time in the 1800s, beginning of the 19th century, and lots of political flux going on, and he's perhaps trying to find a sense of stability. He's come from Sicily, and these are difficult political problems that are going on, and because of his personality, he's absolutely at ease with sentencing somebody to die.
It's very easy.
Very easy, without any judgment. And the bonus is that the prime political obstacle, or one of the sympathizers, has the lover of Tosca, who's the famous diva of Rome at the time. And that is a wonderful opportunity for him to manipulate the political circumstance in order to taste a really wonderful dish.
So tell me more. As Joseph said, he's after Tosca and then he might discard. It's lust, yes? It's not quite a love triangle. It's a very clear, very beautiful relationship between the two of you. But where do you stand with Tosca?
As Scarpia?
Yes.
You mean? Yes. The idea of love. Again, in this second act credo, he says, I really don't care for the ogling and the sort of making eyes or cooing like a turtle dove or doing any of this love sort of. There's no real artistry, shall we say? It's no. It's absolutely talks about the violent conquest. Everything is aggressive. Everything is firm and absolutely. He's got an agenda, and I think Tosca is perhaps part of the agenda.
And is there a future, do you think, or it is about the catch and the ripping apart and then the discard?
Again, in that credo, nemesatio e poi la getta. So I take it, I'm satisfied, and then I throw it away.
She's gone.
Yeah, not a great sympathetic
fellow,
character, really.
So tell me what it's like. You talk about the opening chords of the opera, which absolutely launch you into this filmic world. Also, the entrance that you make, those enormous chords that announce you into the space, and then above that soars your line, un tal bacano in chiesa, bello rispetto. What does that feel like to march through the space, to take control of everybody, and then just to blurt that out?
Well, of course, Puccini has done most of the work for the character and for the performer, really, to have a grand entrance with actually the same chords as the very beginning of the opera. So they can be called the Scarpia or tyranny chords, just these three very strong, full orchestra block chords, almost like a fanfare.
It is enormous, isn't it? It's a heralding.
And you arrive in the thing, and you hopefully haven't trembled too much on the steps, on the backstage on the way up, and you launch your your opening phrase, un tal baccano in chiesa, such a bacchanal in church. What respect is this? And this reveals that irony, shall we say, that Scarpia is he a man of religion, of God, indeed, or is he pretending?
Well, I would like to think about religion as our theme next. Your very nearly last line of Act 1, Tosca, tu fai dimentica di Dio.
Yes.
You make me forget God.
Yes.
You start off with saying, how dare you behave like this in church?
Yes.
And yet, we have your lover Tosca, who of course is a fervent, she comes to pray. And is that something that you admire in her? Is that something that you can take part in? We have very different religious beliefs going on here, I think.
Not to quote Christopher Hitchens, not that he said this, but he said this in a different context, but quite similar. Scarpia is religious when it serves him to be. Religion is a tool to inflict atrocities that would not be possible without the excuse of religion, which is many atheists' main argument, that you can do anything, any good, without any religion supporting you, but you cannot do some bad things thinking of our past, of our religious past, any religion, by the way. I'm not singling out any religion. Any religion. Many atrocities, mass killings, have been committed in the name of God, which God. And so Scarpia is religious when it serves him. Cavaradossi is probably very ahead of his time, but which was not uncommon in France in the period. He does not really believe, he's not religious. How do we know from just the libretto? He doesn't accept a confessor before he's shot in the third act. The guard tells him, we have a priest. And Cavaradossi says no. And then you have the diametrically opposed Tosca, who's actually very religious, and not when it suits her. She really is, and she has this relationship with God that, for example, when she and Cavaradossi get a bit frisky in church, and Cavaradossi points it out in a cheeky way and manner, when he says, davanti alla Madonna, and she says, è tanto buona, she's so good, she's so forgiving, so it's okay. So she really is religious, and Cavaradossi respects her, respects the fact that she is her own woman with her own thoughts, with her own beliefs, and he might not agree with them, but he definitely respects that she has these beliefs, and he has nothing against it, as it should be, right? So it's a triangle of three very different people, and you have Scarpia, who's obviously bipolar, malignant narcissist. When he sees a beautiful woman, he just goes and grabs her by the, exactly. That's basically going back. That's fiction imitating real life, unfortunately, in this case. But yes, he's someone who, as a malignant narcissist would, he sees what he wants, he takes it, and then exactly like he says in the first aria of your aria of second act, he throws it away because it doesn't. I've acquired it. I played my power play. You have no more use. And it's exactly what he does and what he tends to do. He'll go to any length. He'll lie. He will sign this paper to her that Cavaradossi will not be shot, and anything to achieve what he wants. Once he's achieved it,
he moves on.
You're nothing.
No, and we can't not talk about the Te Deum and Scarpia and religion. I mean, you get your time with her alone in the church by offering her holy water.
Yes.
You know you're going to get her back into the space by offering that. And then as she leaves, you prowl down in the space while the chorus up above you go through the Te Deum. What is going through his head at this point? Do you have such incredible ceremony around you?
Yes. Well, again, these sort of a brilliant device, shall we say, by Puccini to use sort of what's known as real music, the music of the people, of the church, as a platform to then set up, as you say, the thoughts of Scarpia in that moment. And he's of course in church. He's seen to be an upholder, shall we say, of the faith, and perhaps an emblem of righteousness within the community, although, of course, Cavaradossi sees right through that. And, but he's thinking not only about the idea, he says, I have a double situation here. I can take the political prisoner and be triumphant in that part of work, but I can also hold the other one in my arms. So this is while this great choral chant is going on.
It's
this sort of absolutely. And he says, actually, the best of it is that he will be on the gallows. Cavaradossi will be on the gallows, and I will have Tosca as my trophy. And what better celebration is there than praising the maker of all that potential?
Which forces you to join in.
Which makes me think how, yes, Father over all the earth, you are worshipped because you give me that possibility.
The ante today, I mean.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in this production, it's interesting because he doesn't quite make the sign of the respectful.
Doesn't compete.
He absolutely then feels the visceral power of the possibilities.
Wonderful.
Which then leads to a wonderful second act.
So, tell me about this production. Tell me about the different spaces that you are placed in this environment. It's a traditional production set at the time that Puccini asked for it to be set, 1800. How do the spaces kind of command how you behave? So we have this beautiful church in Act 1, and then in Act 2, we find ourselves in this enormous study, ransacked. It looks to me like it's been ransacked, and this is your lair.
Yeah, you spend more time in the church than I do. For the first act, maybe you could tell about that.
No, I mean, I just basically do where they place me. They say, go there, and then go there, and then... No, I mean... the truth is, the place, you just try. I was an altar boy for many years, so the smell of smoke, the smell of incense, the smell of burning candles is normal for me. It's even evocative of quite a few years ago now. And so the trick is, as much as nerves and music and responsibility let you, is to feel at ease and to say, if Joseph Calleja was Mario Cavaradossi, how would I act? How would I? And I just try to put myself in that position, become the role, become the character, and just act it out in the most believable fashion possible, whilst, of course, giving the audience what they expect. That's in the first act. In the second act, when I'm in Scarpia's office, Cavaradossi, I'm sure he had past brushes with the law, with Scarpia. He knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly what Scarpia does.
So there is history.
So I'm sure there's some kind of history, maybe not directly, but with his henchmen, with his sbirri, as they're called in the score. And there is no doubt that he got away with it a couple of times because he's openly supportive of the enemy, of the French. So when he enters Scarpia's office, he's convinced that they're not gonna find Angelotti hidden in the well. But then again, he doesn't know that Tosca returned again to the church because of her jealousy to check on him, and he doesn't know about what happened in all of that. He doesn't know that, exactly what went on between Scarpia and Tosca. Of course, he knows that this happened because Tosca joins them in the villa and is followed to the villa, but he doesn't know exactly how much Scarpia knows exactly in that moment in time. So then he is at first, he's dismissive of Scarpia, non lo so. He laughs in his face and in the face of Spoletta, but then things take a turn for the serious when she sees her come in. And it is at that moment that Cavaradossi knows that maybe I'm in way over my head here. Something tells him. And in fact, he grabs her. It's even in the music. Di quanto la vedesti taci o m'uccidi. Of everything you saw that in the villa. Just don't say anything, because if you say one word, I'm dead.
It's over.
And so there, of course, in the third act, it was very funny. I was reading on Twitter, and somebody said, the way I play Cavaradossi, it is as if he knows he's going to die. Well, of course he knows. When he tells him in his face, Vittoria, Vittoria, about the French, and calls him butcher, carnefice, 3 times, not 1 time, not 2 times, 3 times, that's enough. I mean, you spill some milk on Scorpio while you're serving him tea, he'll have you hanged, let alone if you call him butcher for 3 times in his face in front of all his henchmen. That's it, that's it. He knows, that's it, that's that. And then in the third act, when he's, when it's dawn, and what Puccini does in the third act is incredible, because he replicates the churches of Rome, the different bells coming from the different directions, and all that was very controversial at the time, because at the time it's considered as sound effects, not really music, is it? Just church bells, and he tries to replicate dawn in Rome, and in the meantime, you have that beautiful theme of Luceva alle Stelle, which is one of the most beautiful arias. And there, Luceva alle Stelle he is reminiscing in this space that, first of all, he's guilty, because he called Tosca, you betrayed me, I curse you, mai tradito, maledetta. And he pushes her away. At that moment, he hates her, very briefly, but he does. Because he's so disappointed, he's been tortured, he's not thinking straight. And he thinks that was the last time he ever saw her, and he has regret. That if they had to part, that they had to part in such. And so Luceva alle Stelle is just reminiscing of the past he had with her, of her touches, the way she felt, the way she smelled, the way she walked, the way she foiled into his arms. And he finishes the aria, and I end with this. He says, non ho mai amato così tanto la vita. I've never loved life so much, which is haunting. He said, I never was so much in love with life, and now I have to die, and I'm not going to see her again.
And she, of course, she doesn't know this. You go through that duet together with you knowing that you're saying goodbye, and she's looking out to your future, which is already over.
At first, Cavaradossi, at the very beginning of that duet, he has doubts. But for me, I mean, it's different in this production. He realizes before, which I don't agree with personally, but I do, of course, what the director wants. But for me, Cavaradossi knows he's going to be shot when she tells him, ma prima sarai fucilato, per finta, non per davvero. First, you're going to be shot. As in a fake way, but
so
he knows
execution.
There he knows for sure that he's toast.
Jerry, your key moment in this piece, so that we see you taken out. Act 2 is the final moment. Just tell me about that final build-up between you and her, when she gives the nod that, yes, she will bed you to save him.
Well, he's, it's, for Scarpia, it's, yes, job done. It's a sense of course, this was going to be the outcome. He has used, a most vicious and devious device, really, to convince her that the only way that her real love will be saved is by acquiescing to my little jolly needs. And Scarpia really feels at this moment that well, it's always in the music. It's always in the music, isn't it? That there's confidence. There's sort of two bum 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 bum, and then in this production, I like very much. There's a thing where during this sort of music between when he's signing the safe conduct, he sort of goes to the window and closes the window to sort of make an atmosphere.
Set the scene, why not?
To set the scene. Oh, I've waited all this time. Why don't I just take my time to enjoy setting the scene here? How would I like this next moment to be? Well, I'll close the windows. I'll put out a couple of candles. I'll just smarten up a bit and everything. And that sense of complete right. This is when his moment of
ownership.
Yes, absolutely. He's triumphed again. That was easy. Quite entertaining part of the time, but actually, here it comes. And of course, at that moment, the knife is in him. And it's almost for a moment that that moment of feeling the knife go in is like, okay, this is a new feeling. It's not one that I've had before. Is this really the best moment of my life?
I'm not convinced.
Oh dear.
Knife out, ouch.
Out, yes. Help, I'm dying. But anyway, it's a moment, obviously, of theatrical and dramatic power.
It is an iconic moment. And gentlemen, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, my thanks to Joseph Kalea and Gerald Finley.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, later tonight, I will be joined by the head of ROH Collections, Julia Creed, to talk about the different productions of Tosca we've had here. And also, Revival Director Andrew Sinclair will talk to us about our current production. But now to introduce Giacomo Puccini's absolutely extraordinary score, please welcome conductor and repetiteur Paul Wynne Griffiths.
Well, you've heard a lot about the drama that's in that piece from these two wonderful men. It's a big drama. You don't get much bigger than Tosca, so you need substantial voices, you need a substantial orchestra production, which we have here. But the voices need to be adaptable. Tosca comes in, she's jealous, and she's playful, she's loving, she's romantic, and she's murderous. And all of the three main characters are told throughout the score at various points they virtually have to sing as loudly as they can and as high as they can at points. The sort of voices they have to sing the very high notes that they have in their voices to get over this huge orchestra. And I want to show a little bit how Puccini helps the drama and also how it's unique. Each Puccini opera you've heard, although you can sense it's Puccini, they all sound different and they all have a certain timbre of what the drama is about. So Tosca has the Cavaradossi. He sings lyrically. You heard David singing the first aria. Very lyrically, but in Act 2, he needs to be very strong, and when he's interrogated, and there's some testosterone moments where he sings Vittoria on the top A sharp. That varies from 4 seconds to, I think the record in the house was about 16 seconds. I'm not going to tell you who that was. But he needs to have power and beauty and lyricism as well. And that's hard with that size orchestra. Scarpia is an interesting one for me. I had a couple of days working with Jerry before we started. And I found we were discussing together, and a lot of Scarpia, although he's one of the baddies of the whole opera scene, he sings most of the time, he's in control of the situation. Things are going well for Scarpia. He's after his Tosca. He doesn't have to be aggressive at all. He can be elegant. He's an educated man. He can be elegant. If he wants someone to be roughed up, he's got Sciarrone. Sciarra, la sciarra, Italian, meaning a fight. He's a fighter, he's a thug. Sciarrone, a big fighter. Spoletta, spola, meaning a shuttle. He's a go-between. Spoletta's the thinker. He's the one that comes to tell Scarpia everything that's going on. He's the interesting one. He's the one that takes over as head of police once Scarpia is killed. So these aren't just idiots, they're special characters. As the gentleman was saying with Amy, the church has a big impact on this opera. From the very beginning with the comic sacristan who's saying the Angelus into the massive Te Deum. Now, you have wonderful seats to watch the Opera House in this theatre. But I tell you, the best place to see Tosca is backstage. There's so much going on round backstage. There's bells all over the place. There's offstage bands and things. It's offstage choruses and things. It's so busy backstage. It's great fun. But if we look at the Te Deum, there's so much going on. It's got this massive orchestra. And then all of a sudden, the organ comes in. That goes on while the orchestra's playing. I'm going to send the sound man crazy now because I'm going to be playing and talking. Then there's also a cannon shot every 4 bars to announce that Angelotti's escaped. So we get the organ, this is all while Scarpi is singing. Canon. That's all going on. The chorus join in with the Te Deum words, and then at the end you have the church bells going crazy. The sound is massive, and Scarpia is singing on top of all that while this religious festival is going on, and he's singing about lust and doing what he wants to do with Tosca. Act 2, we have the cantata for the celebration. That's off stage with Tosca. Again, while this religious music's going on, Scarpa is interrogating Cavaradossi on stage just before the torture. And even at the very end of Act 2, after Tosca's killed Cavaradossi, killed Scarpia, shouldn't be that way around, so Scarpia, before she goes out, she takes her crucifix off and lays it on Scarpia's chest, because she doesn't feel happy unless she's done that. This is a verismo opera. That means it's truthful. There's no set pieces like you have in Verdi. There's no cabaletta, cavatina, recitative. You have conversations. There's no repetition of words unless there's a specific reason, like Vittoria, Vittoria. There's a reason for saying that, for dramatic reasons. Otherwise, it's just conversation. It's through written. That means it doesn't stop. At the end of Visidarte, there's usually applause, so we have to stop then. But I want to come back to that later. But other than that, the music doesn't stop. It goes on and on and on. There's no point to stop and have a rest and set up the next scene. The orchestra is so important in this piece. I'll keep looking at this to get my page numbers. Very often the orchestra has the melody, the theme, and the singers join in with them. Not the whole melody, just join a bit of the melody, then they'll stop, the other person takes over, and it just goes on. In the love duet in Act 1, Cavaradossi sings, then Tosca takes over. Cavaradossi takes over. Tosca. So it goes on. So although the orchestra's got the main melody, the singers are joining in one by one. Even more than that, actually. Sometimes the singers have no interest whatsoever melodically. The orchestra has the whole musical intent. There's no interest musically from the singers at all. Going back to the Te Deum. Starts off with the bells. Then Scarpia has a conversation with Spoletta. But they only sing one single note, an F. No melody at all. The orchestra has the melody. These are the big Te Deum bells in the church. Presbiri, una carrozza, presto, seguila dovunque vada, non visto, provvedi, sta bene, il convegno, palazzo Farnese. Now that's no melody. We could write that sort of melody. But it's just getting information through. The orchestra's telling us what's going on. Now Puccini does this a lot. When Mimi meets Rodolfo at the beginning, there's no real love interest at all in what they're saying. My candle's gone out. Oh dear, I've dropped my key. Oh, what shall I do? There again, they are singing just the same notes. Scusi, una donna di grazie, mi si è spento il lume, ecco, vorrebbe s'accomodi un momento, non occorre, la prego, entri. It's the orchestra that's telling you that they're falling in love. They're not. They're just having a normal conversation. It's not like what Verdi used to do. In the quartet from Rigoletto, you've got 4 different voices. You've got the Duke saying, "Am I wonderful? Oh, come on, I'm wonderful." To Maddalena. Maddalena's got a little chirpy little tune. Saying, "No, but I've seen all this before. You don't need to come on with me like shut up. I know what you're after." You've got Gilda. She's got a plaintive little tune. Da-dum, da-da-da. That melody from Gilda is telling us what she's feeling. And Rigoletto is, "Shut up, I told you he was like this. Just keep away from that man, he's a terrible man." All those melodies are going together, and the melodies from the stage are telling you what to feel, what the artists are feeling, what the characters are feeling. That's the opposite now in Puccini, because it's the orchestra that's telling you that. Tosca and Scarpia never sing at the same time. They have a conversation, but never do they sing at the same time to create harmony, because they're just not, they're not in harmony, that they're fighting all the time. Surprisingly enough, even Cavaradossi and Tosca hardly sing together at all. They sing together for 18 bars in the whole opera. And if I can show you one of those. Yes, they are together, but the way a composer can show you singers are in love and together or agreeing, they sing the same notes together, they sing in unison, or they sing in harmony together. At the end of the love duet in Act 1, just for 3 bars, Tosca and Cavaradossi sing together. This is Cavaradossi. They sing together now. Together still. And that's it. That's just those 3 bars they sing together, apart from the very end, where they sing in unison the 3, 4. And that's the only time they sing together. Back in Verdi, he would show that by singers coming together. In the Traviata, when Violetta comes in to meet, when Germont comes in to speak to Violetta, they're against each other, they're fighting each other. Violetta doesn't want to do what Germont wants, so they don't sing together until the end of the scene, when she agrees to do what he wants. She understands where Germont is coming from, and she gives up Alfredo for the sake of Germont's daughter. And they sing together, they sing in thirds. Very beautiful, very harmonious. They've come together at last. That's after about 15 minutes of singing together, where they've not sung together at all, but here they come together. Puccini doesn't use that much, but when it does, it really tells. The orchestra is quite sizable. He has triple woodwind, that means he has the 2 flutes plus the piccolo on top, the 2 oboes plus a cor anglais, that's rich, plaintive sound of the oboe, 2 clarinets and the bass clarinet, which has a very woody, strong sound, and the 2 bassoons and the contrabassoon, which is very evil sounding. You associate that with the Inquisitor scene from Don Carlo from Verdi. Very rich sound. And therefore, when we have, if I go back to the Te Deum, when the Te Deum first starts, the same music I played before, but the orchestra playing this music, just bass clarinet, contrabassoon, trombones, and the low strings. So Puccini is creating such a rich, evil sound. While that non-melody was going on above it. Now, each of Puccini's operas have a specific character. And he does that very cleverly, usually with the percussion instruments he uses. In Butterfly, we have the Japanese gongs, Turandot, the Chinese bells. La Rondine, in the first scene, we have a solo piano for the salon party scene. In Fanciullo del West, he even invented an instrument called the phonica, which plays at the end of Act 1, which is like a xylophone that plays certain notes. Well, in this one, as Joseph said, the bells are the important thing. This creates the church tension, and talking about Act 3, the famous bells, they were exactly, as Joseph said, specific bell sounds from Rome. He set up this wonderful Roman character at the beginning of Act 3, even with a little shepherd boy singing, who's singing in Roman dialect. He's not singing in Italian, he's singing in a dialect to give this Roman taste of Rome. There's 11 different bells scored, all backstage. There's 5 percussionists backstage with 2 conductors on both sides of the stage, because it's very specific in the score. Some are near, some are far, some are a bit further away, some are a bit nearer. So to get the right dynamics, it has to be very carefully placed. But the most interesting bell for me is just after the tune appears on the clarinet for E Luci van le Stelle, and we get this. And this bell comes in. A really low E natural. And that E natural is the pitch of St. Peter's big bell. Puccini had gone to Rome and studied all the bells, and the actual atmosphere is so precise, and it's musically so contact. It's really, really wonderful, wonderful writing. He uses motifs for each character, and for sometimes for their thoughts as well. As has been oversaid, we have these big chords at the beginning. Which we associate with Scarpia. But why does that sound evil? Why does that sound aggressive? Because we're going from B flat to E natural. And you musicians will know that's a tritone, which is the devil's tritone. B flat to E natural doesn't sound nice. Those 2 notes don't want to go together at all. To show how that, then he adapts that. It's not just a character, a motif. He can adapt that. So after his big entrance into the church, the sacristan's milling around, and he's so terrified, Puccini combines that aggressive chords of Scarpia with the bumbling, nervous, stuttering sacristan. So we get the big chords. Un tal bacano in chiesa, bel rispetto. Those chords don't quite sound so evil there, because they're combined with the sacristan running around, stuttering away. When he eventually gets killed, Tosca puts the candles either side of his body in respect, and we have the chords, the softest chords in the opera played. They are those chords that we've had, but instead of E major, we have E minor. So it sounds a bit more deathly. And that happens again. Okay, Scarpia is dead. We don't hear about him again now. We go into Act 3. But do we? We start with the shepherd boy singing. That's funny, those are Scarpia chords again. Even though the pizzicato in the strings, very delicate, Scarpia is still lurking over there. Even though he's dead, he's still got his influence on them. The running of the scenes is dramatically wonderful. We go from the escaped convict Angelotti at the beginning to the comic sacristan into the love duet, into the boisterous boys, and then the big entry of Scarpia. Even going into the Visi d'arte, there's a big build-up, and Scarpia thinks he's got her. Everything's gone well, and he shouts two massive mias, "You're mine at last." Mia! Mia! And we hear the offstage drums that's taking people to the scaffold. That interrupts his big climax, if you like, and also it enables him to say, "That's where your love is going to go if you don't give me what I want." I'd just like to finish with a question for you. Tosca's probably played more than any other opera in the world, and this is a number I've taken out. Yeah, it's not scientifically sorted out, but probably 98% of them always cut 3 bars in Tosca. Now, my question to you is, should we? It's after Visi d'arte, and the soprano finishes, "Re, così," and everyone claps. And we cut 3 bars, and we go, and it works very well. Well, what Puccini wrote, "Perché me ne rimuneri così." Have you made your mind up yet? And Tosca says, "Do you really want me to beg?" And then we go on. Now, it's such a definite ending, and everyone applauds. It's such an ending. If we applaud and then we start again, that doesn't work, because that is the end of the previous music. So, should we go on without the applause and bring in that the Scarpia, quasi-Scarpia chords? Or do we let you applaud and carry on with the 3 bars? I'll leave that question with you. But to carry on now, we're going to have David come back now to sing Cavalradosi's Act 3 aria, Luce van le stelle. And if I may say so, just while David's singing this, just listen to the beginning of this. It's what I was saying before. The clarinet has the most beautiful melody. To begin with, David's melody is non-existent. But when he does join in with a melody halfway through, it's just ravishing.
Thank you again to Paul Wynne-Griffiths and to David Yun-Hun Kim. That was extraordinary. Thank you, gents. Now, after tonight's event, if you want to find out even more about Tosca, we have a digital programme available online for free on our website. To find it, please go to roh.org.uk/publications and use the code FREETOSCA in capitals. And now I'm ever so pleased to welcome Head of ROH Collections, Julia Creed. Hi, Julia. Thank you for joining us this evening. So, Tosca, an absolute essential core repertoire for every single opera company in the world. When was it first performed here at Covent Garden?
It was performed here in 1900, only 6 months after its Rome premiere. So it was done very, very quickly. And the famous Croatian soprano, Milka Tanina, took on the role. It's said that Puccini actually came to that performance.
Here?
Here, that's what they said. And Herman Klein, who was a contemporary musical journalist, wrote in one of his books that the audience cheered themselves hoarse at the first production. So it seems to have been very well received.
So that was an instant hit. In London, it was a big yes.
Yes, yes. And when I was researching this and I was looking through the programmes and the collections that we hold and looking at the performance history, it appears time and time again, every season it's performed, right up from 1900 up to 1939, when the theatre closes for the duration of the Second World War.
And it said that he was absolutely thrilled with the soprano who performed it here as well. He was really thrilled with her interpretation of it. So it was a big yes from the moment it was produced here for the first time. And how many different productions of Tosca have we seen here at Covent Garden?
There was a number before the Second World War, and the likes of Amy Destan and Eva Turner sang the role. But from 1946, when the resident opera company, then the Covent Garden Opera Company, was formed, we've had only 3 productions. And in the collections, we preserve material around those productions, and we've got examples of 3 of the costumes worn by Tosca here that we actually have. Well, 2. One of them's on loan from the wardrobe department.
So here they are to my left. So talk me through these beautiful dresses. What am I looking at here? The one nearest to me.
This first one actually relates to the first production, which was in 1950. And that actually looked back before the Second World War and actually used designs from that period. And it was done from 1950 up until 1963. And this is the costume worn by Marie Collier. And strangely, she sang this in 1963, just before the new production came in. And her costumes were redesigned for her by Diana Greet. But not the rest of the production, just these costumes.
Just her costumes for her particularly.
So it's a bit of an odd thing. When we looked at the production photographs, we thought that doesn't match the costume. And then we found the designs and the programme itself. It says that her costumes were specially for those performances in 1963.
And is this her Act 1 dress, so what she appears in church in?
This is her Act 1, yes. And it's not the complete costume. We always seem to lose little bits on the way. She should have a very beautiful bonnet, and a cane and gloves and a necklace as well.
And a cane, how elegant, that's marvellous. Now, I'm very drawn to dress number 2. Is it? It looks like the iconic dress.
It's one of the iconic dresses. It's not actually the one worn by Maria Callas in 1964. We do have that in the collection, but that's going on display later in the year, so we gave it a rest this evening.
She's having a night off.
Yes, having a night off. But the production was done over 40 years.
The Zeffirelli production.
Yes, the Zeffirelli production, with the costumes designed by Marcel Escoffier. And it was done so many times that we've actually got a number of these dresses by key singers. And this was worn by Grace Bunbury. She sang the role between sort of 73 and 1988. And this is the dress she wore when she came back for her 25th anniversary performances in 1988.
So it's absolutely beautiful. And some incredible jewellery there I'm seeing as well.
That we think is the original. It seems to have been worn by a number of singers. And again, this costume would have had additional accessories, obviously shoes, earrings, a tiara, a gold stole, and also a small bag. And
so that's absolutely Act 2, isn't it?
yes, that's the really sort of iconic dress. And it's changed very slightly. When we were looking at the photographs for this production, when we were doing the research, we noticed that Great Britain actually wears hers with sleeves in 1988. We have got them, but she wears it with longer sleeves. So there have been a few minor changes, and occasionally you'll see it with a sort of modesty panel across the top. But it really didn't change in the 40 years.
And there's some beautiful work with the jewellery sewn into the dress as well. It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I absolutely know and recognise dress number 3. This is from our current production, is it not?
This is on loan from the production costume department for this evening. And I have got my eye on this one because it's not part of our collection yet, but I'm hoping we'll have it soon.
I'll fight you for it.
And this is designed by Paul Brown and worn by Christine Opelais. This is her dress. And what was very interesting about this, when we were looking at these, and when we looked back at the other costumes and photographs, was this very, the continuity of the design. The opera is set in a very specific point, so they've kept this very empire line design throughout, even though different designers have interpreted it.
They do. They have a familiarity to them. But you can see here, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of train to deal with. These are long dresses. I mean, beautifully tailored at the front, so you can walk easily. But behind you follows this extraordinary train. That must be quite something to get to learn to manage, to move and deal with. And I'm seeing on our third dress as well, the amount of detail going into that and all the artwork on it, that would have taken an extraordinarily long time to piece together, I think.
It does. I think there's the quality. When we choose costumes for the collections, we also look at the theatre craft, the skills in making. The men and women who work in our departments really are at the top of their game. So we're choosing items because they're of the significance of the productions, the significance of the wearer, or because they're pushing the boundaries of costume and model making as well.
And how many layers are in these costumes? They look quite weighty as well, so it has to become part of your body.
Yeah.
As the artist, you have to deal with lights, you have to deal with makeup, you have to make sure you've got contact with the conductor, you've got contact with all your cast members, and then these beautiful items that are put on you. Are they heavy to move around in?
Well, the red one, the red 64 Zeffirelli, when we took it down off the rack, we couldn't. Why is this so heavy? And then when we actually felt it, it does feel like there is a chain in the hem of the train, and that's obviously been put in by the costume teams to make it move and flow correctly.
So you need it to look beautiful, but also you're adding further weight onto the body. So it's quite an ask, isn't it? Do you have a favourite? That's a mean question. They're all glorious.
Well, the 1963 dress that Mary Collier wears, I've been here 13 years and I'd never seen that on display. So this was a real treat for me to actually get this out and see it in the flesh. But we have several of the 1964 Zeffirellis, but that is such a beautiful dress. It really is. But what I love about this production is that all of the dresses are amazing. They really are quite spectacular.
And all of the extra ornamentation that goes with the jewellery, the earrings, the tiaras. You look like a work of art. You walk into Act 2 of Tosca. It's quite beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for talking us through Tosca's history here at the Royal Opera House and for showing us these amazing costumes. Thank you very much to Julia Creed.
Thank you.
So we've heard a little bit about our current production talking to Julia, but I would now like to invite Revival Director Andrew Sinclair to talk about Jonathan Kent's production. Andrew. Good evening. Now, Andrew is my wonderful colleague from the staff directors and Revival Director of Tosca. And Andrew, you have worked in this beautiful building, if I have it right, since 1974.
That's correct, Amy. I joined as a deputy stage manager. And in fact, one of the first things I did here was to call a revival of the Zeffirelli Tosca.
Oh, wow.
Then Gwyneth Jones was the Tosca, Gianfranco Cecere was the Cavaradossi, and Gabriel Bacquier was the Scarpia.
So you have a beautiful history with this piece.
I love this piece.
Snap. So as revival director of Tosca, could you tell me, what does it mean to be a revival director?
Well, a revival director has to, as best they can, recreate the original production that the director created. Hopefully, you've worked on the original production, which certainly means you're way ahead. But that's not always the case. And then one has to do a lot of study.
So you did work on the original production. In fact, we worked on it together.
We did indeed.
So you were there and you saw Jonathan create it. You heard all the impetus he gave, or everything that he wanted the cast to bring onto the stage with them. Right. So you have all that original knowledge.
Yes.
So when you're preparing to go into rehearsals, where is all that information stored, and how do you get it back and fresh in your memory?
Well, it's in the production book, which we make up during rehearsal, which has diagrams of where the cast go. And also, it really should include motivation, because 7 years down the line, a soprano will say, yes, but why? And you have to know why. And sometimes, if you hadn't worked on production before, you have to invent why.
A version of why.
Yes, indeed. And also now we're very fortunate that we can have archival DVDs of productions which go quite a few years back. With various artists, and so it's a great help to be able to study those as well.
So it depends production to production, but this production in particular, when you have new artists coming in, how much room is there for manoeuvre? Of course, everybody reacts, breathes, behaves in very different ways, and not everybody wants to be told, well, this person did this. You want to find it for yourself. You must breathe the role for yourself. So how does that work?
Well, I mean, one has to give them the outline of the production, basically. But, as you said, that everybody's different. And it's wrong to straitjacket an artist by saying, no, you can't do that because she was on the other side of the chair. You have to allow that artist to breathe a little bit. The most important thing for me is to be faithful to the spirit of the production. And what goes on, therefore, in it can be adapted slightly to suit the artist. I mean, different size people, different heights, for goodness sake, different type of voices.
Different chemistries.
Different chemistry. People don't want to sit down on the stairs sometimes. So don't make them, because it's going to look very uncomfortable. And so, yes, you have to, it's always a voyage of discovery, basically. One tries to go back as much as possible to the original, but no, we have to let them give their performance of Tosca or Cavaradossi or Scarpia, and yeah.
So the word revival, it doesn't quite feel right, because everything feels new every time you see it. You don't come to see a revival of Tosca, you come to see Tosca.
Yes, that's right. That's what one should feel, ideally. And, Puccini was such a craftsman that there are only so many things you can do with Tosca, actually.
Well, tell me about that, because Jonathan Kent's initial idea about the piece, he was rather faithful to what Puccini offered in terms of stage direction and thoughts.
Yes.
Tell me about Jonathan's concept and how he's placed it in all these different spaces.
Well, he wanted very much for Tosca to be seen as a woman alone in a world of men. And the way that this is emphasized is by Paul Brown's sets also, which, they're towering.
They are enormous,
yes,
aren't they?
Acts 1 and 2 are enormous. And then you get this feeling of incredible space in Act 3. And so that Tosca is really, she's dwarfed by the statue in Act 2.
Visidarte.
Yes,
she
absolutely.
feels tiny in that huge world, doesn't she?
That's absolutely right. And also, he wanted to emphasize the political turmoil that Rome was going through at that time. They'd had changes of government, something like 7 in 18 months or something like that. And so that when you look at Scarpia's study in Act 2, it's a lot of the books have been pulled off the bookshelves. There's a trestle table together with a smaller table, and so that's Scarpia's campaign table. There's a sofa over on the other wall in case he needs to take a nap.
It looks like he's half living, half sleeping in that environment.
That's exactly what it is, and it's lit by candlelight, and it's, you know, it's very, very effective. And so into this room comes Tosca.
Up from those incredible stairs, and of course the hidden torture chamber.
Yes.
Which one of the most thrilling scenes. You have Cavaradossi dragged into the torture chamber, and you hear his voice coming through. He's gone, and you know he's being tortured.
It's
and
great theatricality.
It's just genius, isn't it? And what about the Te Deum in Act One? We've talked about that. How does the space kind of evolve the art of the Te Deum?
Well, there are a lot of stairs, of course, which means that the Te Deum takes place above. And below is the space where there's the sacristy and the Attavanti chapel. It's also the place where the contact takes place in both duets with Cavaradossi and Scarpia with Tosca. And as the Te Deum is happening above, there's Scarpia having had this scene with Tosca where he's manipulated her. So it's like the power is coming from underneath.
And he says,
it's the underbelly of power.
It's so great. He talks about Iago having the handkerchief. Yeah. He said, and I've got this fan.
Yeah.
It's grimy, isn't it? He suddenly kind of spoils the area downstairs, whereas upstairs
is absolutely celebratory and religious, and celebrating, of course, something that's been misreported, as we find out later. But no, it's very, very effective.
And tell me about the costumes that you see the chorus all arrive at. They look absolutely sumptuous.
Yes, they are. And I mean, they're various stages of society, or various stages of society, really. And you even have the flags brought in to celebrate the victory, the choir boys. Yeah, it's very, very spectacular.
It is, but Paul Brand did this brilliant thing, and it looks like a prison grill, but in fact it's these bars which separate upstairs in the church and downstairs. So you see all this.
But it's
through
like
the
Tosca
grill.
is trapped, really, in the scene with Scarpia, most certainly.
And it's such a smart setting of the whole piece. Now, Tosca and time. Can you tell me a little bit about the time frame? First of all, where the day it's set, and also how time is used throughout the opera, throughout those three acts.
Well, it's June in 1800, and which is the Battle of Marengo, which was where Napoleon actually won, and the Italians were defeated. But it takes place over 24 hours, basically. And I always love operas like that. Salome is another one. There's nothing like an opera that takes place in real time.
Which ticks away. You can feel the sand running through the time.
And you feel that you're part of this story hurtling headlong to its inevitable conclusion.
Exactly as Joseph said, those opening chords, the moment you hear that, you know you are on a downwards journey, really, aren't you?
Yes,
and you know it's not going to end well.
It's very interesting when we do children's matinees here, because the kids are asked to turn off their mobile phones. And so you see them turn them over.
That's not quite the same, is it?
Which is not quite the same.
Please take note.
And then they gradually come out, and then gradually you see them all being turned off. And they're absolutely into it. They love it.
They love a villain.
They do, and they boo Scarpia. And so if you've got a European artist singing Scarpia, you always have to warn him before the children's matinees. He's going to be booed, but actually...
Which is a good thing.
It's a great compliment.
So, Andrew, the opera's themes, the story of Tosca, is that relevant to us today?
Yes.
You've just talked about the phones being turned off. It must be. Why is it relevant to us today?
Well, I mean, what have we got? We've got political chaos. We've got passion. We've got hatred. I mean, all that is relevant today. You know, people keep on talking about, you know, we need to update operas so that people realise they can associate them with today. No.
It's all here.
Nothing has changed very much. I'm not against updating certain operas, but yes, things haven't changed that much.
I mean, the blissful core of it is her and he, Cavaradossi and Tosca.
Yes.
But there is little hope for them.
Well, although
you cling on to it.
They're not ideally matched, and Jonathan used to talk about the barriers that existed between them, even down to the bouquet of flowers that she carries, that she's going to place before the Madonna. And some Toscas want to do it and some don't, when she sits on the stairs, and sometimes they want to kiss through the railing. Sometimes they don't, but it's a barrier between them.
There's always something keeping them apart.
There's always something keeping them apart until Act 3, when, sadly, the only time they're truly together is the triomphale.
That's an extraordinary moment, isn't it? Just those two voices soaring out alone. There's no, am I right, there's no underscoring there. It's just the two of them uniting for one brief moment before it's over.
And in Jonathan's production, it's very clear that Cavaradossi knows almost from the beginning that he's going to die.
Which makes it even more desperate. I love that choice. It's one of the most desperate goodbyes that only one person knows.
For me too, and she is still believing that it's going to be all right.
I know.
And he knows that, he's going to be dead, she will be caught, and she will be shot. And so he has to make life wonderful for her in what minutes they've got left. And it's beautiful, and it's idealistic, and it's tragic.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about our production of Tosca. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank
Andrew
you,
Sinclair,
Amy.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, sadly, that just about brings us towards the end of tonight's Insight, and we've had lots of lovely comments on YouTube tonight, and we've been joined by viewers from all over the world tonight, including Ukraine, Greece, Germany, Argentina, and a couple of comments. Aaron Ball said, "Thank you, ROH, for another Insight, beautifully planned and coordinated as usual." And Lou said, "I hate violence in films, but I love it in opera." Thank you, Lou. Now, don't forget, you can see our production of Tosca on stage here at the Royal Opera until the 3rd of March and in cinemas worldwide on the 7th of February. Thank you to all of our guests who joined us tonight, and a big thank you to our lovely audience here in the beautiful Crush Room this evening. And thank you to all of you watching worldwide on YouTube this evening. We do have time for one more final treat. Performing Vissi d'arte from Puccini's Tosca, please welcome Nadine Benjamin and Paul Wynne-Griffiths. Thank you.